In the realm of keeping on, our next guest is someone I've known for over 20 years as a friend, as a client when he owned the Wax Museum at Fisherman's Wharf. He used to be head of the Planning Commission. He was on the Port Board of Directors, and now he is the, not even a year yet, I think, CEO and president of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, my friend and colleague, Rodney Fong. Rodney, how are you? You know,
Thanks for
Rodney,
having me, David.
the other day I heard you in a wonderful interview with Manny Yucatiel, who manages Manny's, and it's interesting how these online interviews become news. I mean, Mayor Breed was interviewed the other day, and before a journalist wouldn't think, well, I'm going to watch a Zoom interview to put an article in the paper, but she made news by being online, and so did you. And one of the things that I heard quoted about you in that interview was that you felt that you had been preparing for this moment professionally all your life. Talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that. I mean, I know you're a fourth generation San Franciscan. Tell me about how your past has led you to this moment.
right. Well, that sounds like an audacious statement. I was a little bit embarrassed by that, but um, I think born and raised here in the city, and just having pure love for this city, San Francisco, and knowing it is the only city as my hometown, and for my parents, my grandparents, and even my great grandmother who was here in 1898. Um, I'm concerned about the city and have always been, in the different volunteer roles and some paid roles, but mostly volunteer roles, have put me in a position at this particular moment, leading the Chamber of Commerce, having some knowledge of land use, having some knowledge of the Port of San Francisco, having some business knowledge, having some small business background growing up and running a wax museum for 50 years, and having some understanding of the very complex city we call San Francisco. San Francisco is a lot of different things for a lot of different people, and has an extreme wealth and it has an extreme poverty, and we have to think about all of that. I was listening to the previous conversations, and we are in a new world, and it's a complete reset button for all of us. Here in San Francisco, it's a reset button. It's an opportunity for us to think about the next economy for San Francisco being a progressive one, where we take all walks of San Francisco into consideration, from labor to workforce, to big headquartered businesses that exist here in the city, and of course, small business, which is the backbone of San Francisco.
Well, Rodney, I'm honored to be on the board of the chamber and on the executive committee representing the small business community. So I know small business is the backbone of the city, and you have been relentless in talking about small business and how it's the backbone of San Francisco. I think I asked you this question once just casually, but now I ask it on air. We want to know how the chamber can help its members and businesses in San Francisco. What can businesses do to help what you're trying to do as the chamber get us beyond the great pause and getting us into the great recovery?
Yeah, well, I think it's important that we all remember and recognize that people who are in business themselves are great problem solvers. They are generally jack of all trades because they have to do accounting, they have to do marketing, they have to do sales. And so that kind of ingenuity that happens through entrepreneurship is exactly what we need right now. We need people to be passionate, to be able to push their ideas forward, to not give up and be relentless about sharing their passions, to be employers, to hire people, to be providers, and spend money with vendors to keep their businesses going. So the question is what they can do. I think that one of our aspects is going to be to try to help smooth the pathway as best possible for people to enter into business, for them to maintain their businesses. Right now, our focus is really retention of the existing businesses in San Francisco, making sure that they're healthy and come out the other side of this with enough strength and energy and capital to hopefully ride this out, but then come out strong. So, following us, hopefully you can learn a few things from some of the resources that our public policy is doing, team is working on. Hopefully some businesses actually share their ideas. We want to hear every single idea and suggestion right now. There is no bad idea. There is no idea that's too small or too large at this moment. So share the ideas, share the opinions. We'll get them out there. And, the ingenuity of San Francisco, the can-do attitude, the creativity, I'm certain we can do this.
Yeah, I always have loved San Francisco's motto, the city that knows how. And I remember in February being at the City Beat breakfast, kind of the kickoff to the Chamber's 170th year. There was that wonderful video that I still watch and be moved by called Wake Up San Francisco. That phrase now takes a whole new meaning in the last month. I mean, do you
Yeah.
remember the moment? Yeah. Do you remember the moment when you realized COVID-19 was going to be life changing for the city and for the world?
Yeah. I think when we officially closed our offices and asked everyone to work from home, that I think for all of us on March 15th was the day that we all sort of were like, this is going to be different and this will be different. Um, I do think your reference to our video, Wake Up San Francisco, was intended to be a celebration of business in San Francisco. And we'll
Yeah.
maybe try to get the link to the video here on YouTube if you search it. But it was a double entendre. It was, uh, this is how San Francisco goes about business on a daily life in the morning, wake up. From collecting garbage to bakers getting out at Boudin Bakery and beginning to make sourdough bread, to the fish markets down at Fisherman's Wharf beginning to start their work, street sweeping, our great SFPD working in the morning as well. And the double side was, hey guys, if we don't at that particular time wake up with the city street conditions that they are, of which, let's be very real, we've lost a lot of business because of the conditions of our streets, whether it's tourism or otherwise, or companies being headquartered in San Francisco. Um, it was a wake-up call, and COVID-19 is even a greater wake-up call. I think, David, this hopefully begins to show everybody here throughout the nation that businesses are fragile, and they may have a veneer of being incredibly wealthy and well capitalized. Some are, most aren't. I think all of us find ourselves that we are much more fragile than we want anyone to let on to be, and so we can't necessarily pile everything onto business. You have to let business thrive. We've issued a lot of taxes and voted on a lot of taxes that hamper business. You look at the restaurant industry and how competitive that is in San Francisco. Some of the best food in the world, but there's a lot of it. And every one of those restaurants, friends that we both know, have very thin margins on operating their businesses. And so we've got to figure out a way where people are still interested in being entrepreneurs, can make a living doing it, and hopefully employ some other people who can make a living doing it. But if we cut it too thin, as we see here, even with we've only been this in 4.5 weeks, how fragile the business environment is. And I just want to keep pushing that forward because while a hotel may have a fancy chandelier and marble staircases, they have payments too, and they have mortgages, and they have debt service, and they have employees and insurance to take care of as well.
Right. It only seems like 4.5 years. It's only been 4.5
Did I
weeks.
say years? Sorry,
Or, yeah,
weeks. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I was looking down because I just got texted a question from a viewer, and they ask, are there any steps that small business owners that can't pay rent or keep their employees, what can they do now to make sure that they can open after the great pause into what I'm going to start calling the great recovery?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I think this is a difficult problem because the tenants, the businesses themselves are finding themselves obviously in a pinch. The landlords don't necessarily have any relief above them, so they're not necessarily in a position to just to forgive rent. Above that, the insurance companies I think are at large also looking at how they can help out, but they're ultimately going to need federal assistance as well. So this whole problem trickles up. It's not just for the tenants; it's for the landlords as well. It's for property owners, nonprofits, not just for-profit businesses. So this is a very challenging time and a watershed time for our nation to look at how it's going to continue to survive.
Now, I know that you are one of the members of Mayor Breed's Recovery Council or committee, whatever it's called. Talk to me about that. Who comprises that, and what have you been charged with? And then, on a personal note, tell me what it's like working with Mayor Breed, the gym buddy for my husband Alfredo and I, who probably we won't see next to each other on a stairmaster for at least a few weeks.
Right. So I was absolutely honored. The mayor asked me if I would help co-chair the San Francisco Economic Recovery Task Force. I'm going to be joined by Carmen Chu, the city assessor, Jose Cisneros, the city tax collector, and Rudy Gonzalez, who represents labor. The four of us have been working together and put together with the mayor's leadership a task force of 80 people. 80 seems like a large number, but this is a big town and there are many different sectors and we just can't get everybody here. But hopefully the 80 people represent their sector, represent their other businesses within their industry. And so hopefully we're going to get roundtable interview discussions with each of those sectors, with each of those business leaders, sector leaders. It's everything from healthcare to nonprofits to hospitality to the real estate to the development community to the housing community and of course labor. So hearing from all of them, we'll have a pages and pages of recommendations. We want to try to score them. We want to try to put some sort of matrix. So when we present it to the mayor's office, that she can look at it and pick and choose. Personally, I probably feel this is not necessarily a plan that we can stick to. This is a very moving, dynamic challenge that we're in now, and we don't know how long it's going to go on. We don't know how long the recovery will take. So in my mind, it's probably more like a playbook where you have 100 plays. Maybe the first few are scripted, but then after that, depending on what curveballs were thrown, sorry for all the sports analogies, but whatever challenges were thrown, we'll have to go back to that playbook and pull out what's appropriate, what has the best efficiencies, what costs the least, quite honestly, what creates the most amount of jobs, what the long-term impact of something might be by making that investment now. So I'm looking forward to it. It is going to be a challenge. Organizing 80 people is a challenge in itself. But getting the city back to as close as what we think is normal, the new normal, getting people employed is number one. Creating jobs is number one. And getting the city back on its feet. And if any city has an opportunity to do it, San Francisco has a good opportunity to do that.
Great, thanks, Rodney. I've always known you not only to be practical but optimistic. So your optimistic leadership is much appreciated now. Any closing thoughts before we head on to our next guest?
No, just really quickly, if people can think about this a little bit, the real success in my mind about getting business back and getting the working force back, it really is tied to the school system. If we can get our school system back up and running where teachers and parents are comfortable sending their kids to school, and there's a great program and new compliance for schools, that then frees up the employer, the parents, to get back into the workforce. But until the school system is 100% or has a good plan, I don't think we get back. So from the business community, I'm reaching out to the education system to help them and do whatever we can to help them get on their feet and establish a great, safe plan for all the kids and families.
Thanks so much, Rodney. Rodney Fong, President and CEO of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, and more importantly, a true San Franciscan. Jen, back to you.
Thanks, David.
David and Rodney, while you're still here, so many of my mom friends are wondering what school will be like once it gets started back up. Will the kids have smaller classrooms? Will there be no more recess, or maybe recess 10 at a time? I know there's just so much that everyone is looking at and thinking about going forward. Are you guys still around to weigh in on that, or did I lose you?
I'm here, and that's a great question. And I'm not an expert in the educational system, but would love to, have a conversation more to the point about getting kids safely back to school. I know it's a question amongst all our friends who are parents. I'm a parent. The kids are a little bit older, but they are in college now and facing the same things. It's a very difficult time for anybody, all of us, but for college kids, and it sounds like you have one as well. For them to not know what's their future really holds. And it already was a difficult time for them not knowing what their future holds and what major to select or what the job market looks like. But for them to not even know if they're going back into a campus lifestyle, which is a fun lifestyle and a great time of their lives, I feel bad that that's been taken away from them.
Being stuck at home with mom and dad isn't fun? What?
It's not, trust me.
Thank you again. And I know that this is a topic we'll likely address next week. Same time, same show. In the meantime, thanks so much again